One man's guess became the history of a billion people. He never set foot in India, never saw the rivers, never touched the soil. He sat in a study in Oxford, 4,000 miles away, and decided who Indians were. His name was Max Muller. In 1867, he wrote a letter to his wife. That letter still exists. In it, he says his work on the Vedas was the only way to uproot everything that had grown from them in 3,000 years. Read that again. He wasn't trying to understand the civilization. He was trying to destroy one with a pen. He called it the Aryan Invasion Theory. Fair-skinned warriors sweeping down from Central Asia, conquering the people who were already there, writing their sacred texts, inventing their caste system, becoming the ancestors of every Indian who mattered. No bones, no weapons, no mass graves, no burned cities, not one shred of physical proof. And it became fact for 150 years. Then a woman who died 4,600 years ago opened her mouth from the grave, and the whole thing came apart. Muller had noticed something true. Sanskrit and Latin and Greek share bones, same roots, same grammar too similar to be coincidence. Then he made a jump nobody checked. Same language, he said, must mean same people. Same people must mean an invasion. Nobody else who looked closely bought it. In 1841, before Muller's theory even existed, a British historian named Mount Stuart Elphinstone combed through every Indian text he could find. Not one of them mentioned the homeland anywhere else. Not one hinted these people had ever lived anywhere but where they already stood. 100 years later, B.B. Lal ran the entire archaeological survey of India. He searched his whole career for a single trace of an invading army. He found nothing. Zero. Not a sword. Not a skeleton. The theory had no evidence, none, and it ran the world's understanding of an entire civilization for a century and a half anyway, because it was useful. In 1857, India rose up against the British. Hundreds of thousands died. The empire nearly lost everything in one summer. After that, the British stopped trying to rule India by force. They started rewriting how Indians saw themselves. The Aryan Invasion Theory did it perfectly. It told Indians, you were always conquered, your gods came from somewhere else, your culture was never really yours, so why fight men who only look like the people who ran you the last time? Muller watched what he built and panicked. For the next 30 years, he tried to take it back, writing again and again that Aryan was only ever a language family, never a race. Too late. The idea didn't belong to him anymore. 60 years later, the Nazis picked it up and finished the sentence he never meant to write. 6 million people died at the end of a theory that started as a guess about grammar. Then, in 2019, a woman spoke. Scientists pulled her DNA from a 4,600-year-old grave at Rakhigarhi, the largest city the Indus Valley ever built. 28 researchers, one genome, published in the journal Cell. They checked her code for step ancestry, the genetic fingerprint you'd expect if her bloodline came down from Central Asia, exactly where the invasion theory said the Aryans came from. There wasn't any. Not a trace, 0%. The study's own words, no detectable ancestry from steppe pastoralists, meaning farming in this region grew from the people already living there, not from some sweeping migration out of the West. India rewrote its own textbooks because of this one grave. The current NCERT curriculum now states the genetic line from the Harappans runs unbroken into today's population, a line with no gap for an invasion to have ever happened in. One skeleton undid 150 years of empire-built history. But here's where it gets dangerous to oversimplify. Neeraj Rai, one of the scientists behind that discovery, found something else hiding in the data. Steppe DNA does exist in Indians today, heavily in the north, sometimes a fifth of someone's entire genome. But it arrives late, after 1500 BCE, after the Indus Valley's great cities had already gone silent. So what actually killed the world's largest Bronze Age civilization? Not an army, not a sword. The rivers dried up, the climate turned on them, the cities emptied out on their own with nobody storming the gates. Only after that collapse did new people start arriving, in small numbers, slowly, over centuries. Not conquerors, settlers. They didn't replace the people already there. They married into them, disappeared into them. Vasant Shinde, who dug up that very grave at Rakhigarhi, said it plainly. Everyone assumed progress in the Indus Valley had to come from outsiders moving in from the West. It didn't. The people who were already there built it themselves. Even the scientists who made the discovery warned that one skeleton can't speak for an entire civilization. More graves are being opened right now. The story is still moving.
What's actually true? So strip away the Empire's version. Strip away the headline version. What's actually left when the dust settles?
The invasion never happened. No army crossed those mountains. No conquest was ever recorded in stone, in bone, or in blood. Not one weapon, not one mass grave, not one burned wall. That part is as close to settled as ancient DNA gets. But people did arrive later, quietly, not on horseback with weapons raised, on foot, in small numbers, generation after generation, long after the great cities had already gone silent on their own. The cities didn't fall. They emptied. And then the newcomers arrived, not to a thriving empire ready for conquest, to an empty stage. They walked in after the lights had already gone out, and somehow history handed them the headline act. Here's what nobody tells you in the textbook version. Those cities they wandered into had already been standing for 2,000 years before any of them showed up. Drainage systems running beneath the streets, trade routes stretching all the way to the Persian Gulf, granaries built to feed tens of thousands, bathhouses, standardized weights, entire grids of streets planned out before Rome was even a village on a hill. All of it built by people who were already there, people the old theories simply wrote out of their own story. The Aryan Invasion Theory didn't just invent a war that never happened. It went further than that. It reached back 2,000 years, took credit for cities it had nothing to do with, and handed that credit to invaders who showed up centuries after the real work was already finished. One grave in Haryana put a stop to it all. One woman, dead 4,600 years. She never carried a sword, never rode down the mountains, never conquered anyone. She carried something far more dangerous to the old story, the truth, sealed inside her own bones, waiting 4,500 years to be read. You didn't arrive as a conqueror in your own homeland. You were already standing on it. Your ancestors built the streets you're standing on right now. The DNA just finally said so, out loud. After 150 years of silence, after empires fell and textbooks were printed and generations grew up believing they came from somewhere else, one genome pulled from one grave said otherwise. If a story like this gets under your skin, one body in the ground undoing a century and a half of accepted history, stay close. Science keeps doing exactly this. Every few years, something buried for thousands of years comes back to the surface and rewrites what we were told was permanent, what we were told was unquestionable. So the next time someone repeats the invasion story like it's settled fact, don't argue with them. Just ask them one question. Where's the body?